We're here to talk today about the House Bill 588, which was filed last session, which helps with Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and it kind of puts some more money in that area so we can allow people to buy homes. And we know home ownership is one of the fastest ways to wealth, is one of the fastest ways for stability for Kentuckians as well as Americans. So with that, I'll just turn it over. If you could introduce yourselves and talk about some of the facts that we have and some of the information we have that's very crucial to this legislation.
All right. Thank you, Representative Bratcher. My name is Adrienne Bush. I'm the Executive Director of the Homeless Housing Coalition of Kentucky. And while I find the present button, I will allow my colleague to introduce himself.
Thank you. I'm Scott McReynolds with the Housing Development Alliance in Hazard, Kentucky.
All right. So just to put the housing supply gap numbers in a visual way, we know we are short about 200,000 homes as of 2024. When we look at the number of units we are short for 0 to 6 people who are 0 to 60% of the area median income, in the home ownership area, we were short 39,813, and in the rental area, 86,152. And these numbers, of course, are coming from Kentucky Housing Corporation and Bowen National Research. In 2029, if we do nothing policy-wise, we can expect those numbers to grow. And I just want to share that this is a significant portion of the housing gap that we have. So how does the Affordable Housing Trust Fund increase and preserve housing supply? It's a funding vehicle that was established by the General Assembly back in 1992. It's been around for a minute. Under KRS 198A.720, it is supporting the statewide production of housing for Kentuckians who are living below 60% of the area median income. Just for reference, that is for one person, it's about $35,000 a year that they are earning. Family of four, it's around $50,000 and some change. It's pretty flexible. It funds single-family home construction, emergency repairs to preserve existing homes, and then rental development for duplexes and even apartments. Here's how it's funded now. There is a $6 transaction, a fee that happens per deed transfer and mortgage recording fee each. There is no recurring appropriation from the General Assembly in the form of the biennial budget. What has happened is over the last 3 years, the fees have only generated about $3 to $4 million annually, which needs to be spread out statewide. Doesn't buy you very much housing, if you will. And what we've seen is that as the housing market inventory has tightened, receipts have steadily declined from a high of $5.8 million. This is a visual analysis of kind of where the trust fund has been since it has been operational. And you can see that its purchasing power has declined over time. So how does it work? Kentucky Housing Corporation awards funds through annual competitive grant applications to nonprofit developers based on local community needs. All the funds are awarded and forward committed annually. So there isn't just a reserve pot of money earning interest somewhere. It's put to work. Project applications exceed the amount available each year, and it has a leveraging power of $1 to $7.90, nearly $8, in bringing in additional federal resources into Kentucky. It can match funding from federal and non-federal resources like the Federal Home Loan Bank. Since it's been around, $48 million has been loaned out and $118 million has been granted. Over half of AHTF resources have funded homeownership construction and repair, and 48% have funded rental development. 63% have gone to rural communities, 36% have been awarded to urban areas. Over this time, I think it's important to note that nearly 13,000 homes have been built or preserved. This is a visualization also done by Kentucky Housing Corporation on their Tableau account, where you can see where the trust fund is going and the amount of money going to different counties over time. And with that, I'm going to turn it to my colleague, Scott McReynolds.
The Housing Development Alliance serves Perry, Knott, Leslie, and Breathitt County in far southeastern Kentucky. In 2024, our piece of the housing supply gap was 2,200 units in those small rural counties. About 1,300 of those units were for people with incomes at or below 50% AMI. So 60 to 70% of our housing gap is would be met with, people are eligible for the trust fund. What that gap looks like in real people terms is we have 180 families who are seeking home repair. That's about 3 years' work at our current rate of production. So if you call me today and say your roof is leaking, you're looking at least 36 months until we can get there to help you. On the home ownership side, we're working with 380 families that would like to purchase a home. That's about 6.5 years if you call today. On the rental side, our waiting lists stay full. When we do get to the point that it's time to add a few names to our waiting list, we'll run an advertisement and we'll shut it off in 24 to 48 hours because I've already received 20 applications for one unit. The future is even scarier for us. Even if we could wave a magic wand and plug the housing supply gap today, we'd have to continue to build 360 houses a year till 2029 in order to meet the expected supply gap. In trying to meet that gap, the trust fund has proven to be a critical piece of funding for many, many reasons. First, it's incredibly flexible. We've used trust fund for everything for emergency repairs after a disaster all the way up to a multifamily building. Second, the trust fund is not burdened by federal regulations. Federal regulations will slow projects down, they will cost more money, and sometimes they make projects just simply impossible. Third, even though the federal money is difficult to use, it is essential, especially in rural communities, that we can bring that money in, and the trust fund can provide that local match that's required for federal projects. Small rural communities that have low wealth are very challenged in finding that 5 to 10% required federal match. The trust fund can plug that gap. Finally, the trust fund is a Kentucky program controlled by Kentuckians for Kentucky. It's probably not a surprise if I tell you the housing folks in DC don't understand Perry County, Kentucky. You folks do, the folks at Kentucky Housing Corporation do. So it's great to have a source of money that is actually designed to work in our communities. How we've been using the trust fund since the mid-90s, and this is how we've used it to plug the housing supply gap in our community. We've developed 19 rental units, and that includes a 10-unit single-room occupancy building for formerly homeless adults. So these are the hardest to serve folks in our community. It's been operational for 25 years. So these investments have a long-lasting impact. We've developed 4 rental duplexes, 3 of which target people with disabilities. So again, folks who are very vulnerable in the housing market. We've developed 1 fully accessible single-family house because there was no house that you could rent that was wheelchair accessible that we could find in Perry County. We had a family move in from public housing. They had 50 steps to get into their unit when they've moved in. Linda is the grandmother raising a profoundly disabled child. They've lived there for 20 years and not missed a single rent payment. We've completed 227 home repairs using just over $3 billion of trust fund, and we brought an additional $2 million of other funding to that. We've used it for minor repairs after emergencies like windstorms and ice storms, and of course the major flooding. We've used it for repairs that are to bring a house up to standard so that it will be a quality home for many years. One family we helped was Betty and her granddaughter. They were impacted by the 2022 floods. Their house is not in the floodplain, but the little creek in front of their house got up about 20 feet and got into about a foot into their house. And they spent the night sitting on the back of the couch to stay dry. We met her a couple of weeks later when one of our contractors came to us and said, "You need to help this woman. She's in her 60s. She'd already ripped out all her drywall and all her flooring, and she was trying to learn to drywall to put her house back together." We were able to come in and take some private donations, blend it with the trust fund, get her house back together. We were able to elevate the HVAC unit so when the creek gets up next time, it won't destroy that. We've used $2.6 million of Affordable Housing Trust Fund to build 108 affordable homes, leveraging over $10 million of additional funding. I was trying to figure out what story to tell, and I thought about we just moved an elderly gentleman who's worked all his life and never owned a home. He's got $1,500 a month retirement. He's a homeowner. We have another homeowner who just moved in with a single father with 3 kids, moved out of public housing, wanted to have a yard for his kids to play in. But I think one of our most impactful stories is Donnie. Donnie is, and his family, Donnie's a really, really hard worker. When we met him, his skill set was such that he did kind of that entry-level manual labor. And when he couldn't find those jobs, he'd sell newspapers on the street corner for tip money so he could take care of his family. He had a $1,300 a month income in 2001. He has been a homeowner for 25 years. His daughter graduated with honors from the local high school and is on her way to achieving her dream of being a medical professional who deals with in a trauma response. She's currently a paramedic and hopes to eventually become a trauma nurse. So the trust fund is critical for meeting the housing supply gap and helping folks like this. It's also a big benefit to the community. HDA puts people to work spending trust fund dollars. We have over 50 employees, including 30 construction personnel. We also contract with local subcontractors, over $5 million expected this year. And we also support those local businesses through those subcontracts and through an additional $5 million of local building materials that we'll buy from local vendors. It builds the tax base. We have a $2.6 million payroll that gets, occupational taxes paid to the local governments. We're adding $11 million to the property tax base. So it benefits both the community and the folks who get to move into housing. And one of the concerns we sometimes hear about increased housing funding, and I think it's a legitimate concern, is there the capacity to spend this money effectively? What we've seen and what we've taken away from the flood and the tornadoes, I would say, in Western Kentucky, is that when there is a steady supply of money, nonprofits and other developers will find the capacity. My organization went from building 20 houses a year to building 60 houses a year, simply because money was available and we knew the community had that need. And there are other agencies that have had that same experience.
Oh, thank you, Representative. All right. So the question is, we have this program that has been put to work in Kentucky. How can we modernize it, since it has been a while since it's been updated? We are proposing that it would be helpful to increase the portion of the real estate mortgage and deed transaction recording and indexing fees to $13 and $23. So it would be $36. This is all in House Bill 588, which was filed last year. The adjusted amount will yield approximately $10 million per year, which would spread across the state and would create an additional 600 homes built and repaired annually over time. We propose that we would index this fee annually using the percent increase Sorry, I'm kind of jumping over my words. Index the fee annually using the percent increase in the non-seasonally adjusted annual average consumer price index for all urban consumers, or CPIU figure, which is used in other parts of KRS to help address future market fluctuations and inflation. So we don't go years between the fees being adjusted. We believe that this will yield an additional 6,000 single-family and rental homes being built over the next 10 years. This would help to leverage additional grant dollars, support the housing development workforce, and begin to close the largest housing supply gap for Kentuckians. This is from Kentucky Housing Corporation's presentation a couple of task force meetings ago, where they compared where we stand. Right now, the $6 fee is pretty low compared to some of our neighboring states and then some of the bigger states who are captured. How do Kentuckians and Kentucky benefit? We see from NCSL, the National Conference of State Legislatures, that research demonstrates that access to stable housing may improve health outcomes and decrease healthcare costs. Providing access to stable and affordable housing reduces disruptions from involuntary and frequent residential mobility and provides children with consistent learning experiences. This is from a Habitat for Humanity research brief. And then lastly, we are quoting the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce and the Home Builders Association. I want to be clear. This was coming from the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce and their presentation to the task force, where they talk about the economic benefit to Kentucky communities from a couple months ago. And then lastly, this is our contact information, and we're leaving you with a picture from inside a home that was redeveloped in Louisville. With that, we're happy to take any questions, or I'm ready to turn it over back to Representative Bratcher, excuse me.
I think we can all agree that we have a housing shortage in Kentucky, and this is one option of many that we could use to try to fix this housing shortage and to get people that are hardworking Kentuckians into affordable housing. So we'll be happy to take any questions.